What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, shock and awe hit the internet when a new Game of the Year contender emerged after reviews dropped for Pokopia, or Pokopia. Still have to work out exactly how to say it, but nonetheless, it is up there now as the top-rated game of the year. And we're going to take a look at some of the reviews and what exactly people are saying about it here today. Also, we are going to be talking about something that's kind of controversial just by its nature, with ROMs and archives. However, there is one that is being shut down that is massive and has people weighing back and forth when it comes to, yes, piracy, but also video game preservation. And Capcom, they just released Resident Evil Requiem, and it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon because they have a showcase that just got announced for this week, looking at games for 2026 and a little bit even into 2027. All of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're here every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, going over the world of gaming news, trying to keep you up to date. So even if you don't get a notification in the morning for a new video, just know there's probably still one here to check out. And we're going to start today with an event that's happening in about an hour or so when this video goes live, and that's an Indie World Showcase for Nintendo. We can see this over on their social media account saying join us tomorrow, March 3rd, 6 a.m. Pacific or at 9 a.m. Eastern for a new Indie World Showcase. Tune in for roughly 15 minutes of news and updates on indie games coming to Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch. I know people still groan when they see Nintendo Switch because the Switch 2 is much more powerful, of course, more capable, as we're already seeing with something like Resident Evil Requiem, but still, these Indie World Showcases are interesting because typically you'll see some kind of shadow drop, usually something into the eShop right away, either during the presentation or immediately following it, and there are some genuinely new and unique ideas that do at least show up here. And you could have something like, hey, Mina the Hollower maybe getting a release date. Some have even wondered if Claire Obscure could show up here, and I mean, I guess that could happen, but, you know, it'll just be something fun to see what exactly comes out of it. And some are also wondering about a general direct. Look, it's Nintendo has the partner, the indie, and then you figure the general direct will come up at some point. But first, I think we still need to get past Mario Day to see if they have anything planned for that. But at least for now, this morning, we should have an Indie World Showcase to look over. And of course, I'll be covering that tomorrow in Newswave. Also, we did have a new entry that's been teased for Game Pass on Xbox and PC, and we can see this. Now, this is over on the Xbox Game Pass account saying something V cool is coming soon. V, of course, referencing the character in Cyberpunk 2077. So everyone basically assumes that will be announced here pretty soon because Microsoft does have to set up the next wave of Game Pass titles because there's really not much else out in front of, I guess, of the Xbox and PC for Game Pass here outside of Forza Horizon 6. I believe that's like the last thing in the coming soon tab for Xbox Game Pass. So this should be part of, I guess, a string of announcements here pretty soon over on Xbox Wire. And of course, when it pops up, we'll take a look at it. But I would assume, at least for now, the Cyberpunk 2077 entry should be available then. Oh, and since it is March 3rd, it's another year older for the Switch 1, and actually right now it's 9 years old. Think about that for a second, because I do look back on when it was first revealed. Remember they had that whole trailer where it was like the first look at it, and they were giving us at least a preview as to how it would work, going from console form, like docked, to handheld, and then back again, and we saw that quick glimpse of Skyrim, and we're like, wait, that's actually going to be a thing on the go, and it's crazy to think back 9 years, more than 9 years for that, but then also when the Switch 1 released, it's just, it doesn't feel like it's been that long, 9 years. I mean, next year, 2027, will officially be a decade since the Switch 1 launched, and actually later on this year, it'll be a decade since that original Switch 1 reveal. It's just, it's crazy to think about like the passage of time, and seeing something like this just reminds me of how fast things really do move. But Nintendo's in a much better place than they were when they first showed the Switch 1, technically back at the end of 2016, because they were still coming off the Wii U, and that was not great for them. But the Switch turned things around. The Switch 2 continues to roll along as well. So just it's something interesting to think about there. 9 years now for the Switch 1. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Pokopia, or Pokopia. I think I'm going to stick with Pokopia. I know on the broadcast it said Pokopia, Game Freak, or the Pokemon Company, I should say, and then the dub voice said Pokopia, but it's just, I don't know, that sounds right to me. But either way, It surprised a lot of people, myself included, when reviews started coming in for this thing. Now, it previewed well, so I will admit I looked at it and said, you know what, even if it's not the highest reviewed game of the year or anything like that, I think it's still going to sell very well. I mean, it's Pokemon, but also it's a genuinely different or unique, I should say, Pokemon experience. So maybe that mixed in with Minecraft, they were showing the multiplayer elements. Like, I could see the vision or the path forward for this game to 10 million plus fairly easily. Well, now the reviews coming in, I will admit, because it is now the highest rated game of the year, I do feel inclined to at least check the game out and see exactly what's going on here, because you can see over on Metacritic, currently sitting at an 89, which, I mean, at this time, yes, the highest rated, highest reviewed game of the year, 1 point above Resident Evil Requiem. Now, Requiem does have like more than double the amount of reviews. So who knows, as more reviews come in with Pokopia, it could jump a point, sure, to 90, but could also fall a point to 88 and be right there with Requiem. Either way, I don't know anyone who went, yeah, obviously Pokopia is going to show up and jump ahead of Requiem as the best rated game of the year. But here we are. Now, again, this is on 57 reviews at this time, and there are many perfect scores for this game. Screen Rant, for example, gave it 100 and said there are many things I want to gush about with Pokemon Pokopia. Silicon Era gave it 100, saying Pokemon Pokopia invites us to discover, explore, rebuild, and reconnect, rewarding us for every action along the way. Tech Radar Gaming, another perfect score. Pokemon Pokopia was always bound to be up there among my most played games of 2026, but even I underestimated how well Nintendo would tackle its latest town-building cozy life sim. It's story-driven, offering a great gameplay loop, inventive mechanics, and very few friction points. That was something I was curious about, because when you get into kind of the building mechanics, gathering resources, managing stuff in your little town that you're building, it can get kind of, I don't know, overwhelming, but also kind of fatigue inducing. Is like, man, I gotta keep an eye on all this stuff. Seems like they kind of worked through a lot of that though in this game from a lot of the reviews I was looking at. VGC also gave it a perfect score, saying Pokopia is an excellent life simulation game that takes the best bits from champions of the genre and evolves into something that Pokemon fans and cozy game fans will love. Late game grinding doesn't dull an adventure that's as full of discovery at 100 hours as it was at once. So, to my understanding, this is rolling with a real-time clock, so there are points where you want to build something, but they're like, oh, come back tomorrow because it's going to take a day, and then you actually have to come back tomorrow. So that is something that it feels a little artificial in terms of lengthening the game, but that has been in games with real-time clocks and building and life simulation for a long time, so that part isn't necessarily new. It's kind of almost expected when you go into these kinds of games. CG Magazine gave it a perfect score, saying Pokopia is one of the most robust cozy games to date, essentially melding two Nintendo franchises into one content-rich whole that should keep fans pleasantly busy for some time. I saw a lot of comparisons to Animal Crossing. That was coming up quite a bit. Let's move over to the opposite end of the spectrum. Again, you have to go through many perfect scores, a lot of 9s, and then we get down here to The Gamer. They gave it a 60, saying there is a fun time to be had here, but ultimately, Pokemon Pokopia doesn't explore the Pokemon side of its world and offers building quests that are mostly rigid and repetitive. As ever with Pokemon, there is enough charm to see it through, and the mechanics aren't shallow, even if they're used in aid of the same few tasks over and over again. And I do think this is a game that's going to do very, very well, obviously, with Pokemon fans, but it also seems like it would do well with fans of things like Dragon Quest Builder, since it's the same team who made that game series, also working here, Koei Tecmo. And, you know, I know I've said, yes, I don't know, maybe it'll do well just because it's the Minecraft genre and Pokemon melded in, but now it's just apparently a really, really good game. So because I like to try to check out, even if I'm not a huge fan of it, like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as an example, I like to try to check out any game that very well could end up being nominated for Game of the Year when we get to the end in December. And I'm kind of looking at this like maybe this will be one of those games that we get to the end and everyone's like, well, it's one of the highest rated titles, so obviously it's going to be nominated. That very well could happen. So I probably will have to check out this game. The thing I'm kind of hoping is that the story, because I've seen this in reviews, people are saying it's like this, I mean, it's a town that's all busted up, almost post-apocalyptic, and you're trying to figure out what happened. to all the people, basically. Like, what exactly was this cataclysmic event that turned this area, or this town, into like this post-apocalyptic ghost town? So that is something I'm hoping is explored in an interesting way and it has a good payoff. But I guess I'm gonna be checking out Pokopia later on this week to see what it's all about. But there you have it. At least at this time, an 89 on Metacritic, highest rated game of the year. Oh, also worth noting real quick, also the highest rated Pokemon game ever made, and it wasn't by Game Freak. So, hey, shout out to Koei Tecmo. They got it done. I think that puts them ahead of, I feel like it was Pokemon Y that might have been the highest rated one up to this point, but nope, now it's Pokemon Pokopia. Next up, let's talk about a ROM archive that is set to shut down at the end of this month, and this has left the online community absolutely scrambling to try to back everything up, and this is Myrient. At least that's how I think it's pronounced. It's one of those things where I always just read it. I don't actually ever say it out loud, but we can see this over on Time Extension, where they say Myrient, a self-described video game preservation service. I mean, that's one way you can describe it, saying, which houses over 390 terabytes of organized collections publicly available for download, is closing down on March 26th. It has been announced. A combination of insufficient funds, the use of paywalled download managers by certain users, and the rising cost of PC hardware such as RAM and SSDs has forced the site to close its doors. Myrient webmaster even revealed that the monthly cost of running the site was leaving him over $6,000 out of pocket each month, which I feel like that's $6,000 beyond whatever donations that they get, as they'd have to make up the difference here. So whatever you go on those sites like an archive with Myrient, and it's like, oh, donate to help us out. I mean, they really mean it in this case. So with them shutting down, the community is going crazy trying to back up these different files. There are entire Discord groups that are being formed, entire initiatives where people are basically dedicating bandwidth to try to download and then store these files online. And it's tough with 390 terabytes. That's a lot of files. And look, I know, yes, there are many, many illegal ROMs there. Absolutely. You can look through it yourself and find them. But there are also a lot of obscure things that you would never think about that are backed up. And in that case, yes, you would end up in the preservation territory. I mean, I look through there are demo discs that no one really thinks about. There's promo discs. There are entire magazine scans all backed up. So there's a lot of history there with gaming, which I think is the biggest point to be made. When this goes away, as they're saying, end of March, all this other stuff goes away too, that otherwise wouldn't be accessible. That is still something we're trying to come to terms with and figure out. In gaming, it's like, how do we preserve gaming's history? Or is it the responsibility of all these big companies that I don't think really care that much about preserving, since we always hear stories about them losing source code. And naturally, they would like to remake or remaster and then resell these different games. So it's kind of this give and take. And at least here, there was indeed a large archive that was easily accessible. Well, in a few weeks, it's going away. So I'll be curious to see, again, the initiative right now, the big push by the community trying to back this stuff up, because it's going to be quite the task to back up hundreds and hundreds of terabytes in less than a month. Next up, let's talk about Capcom, who they just got to relax at this point. They just put out Resident Evil Requiem, one of the Game of the Year contenders, I figure, for this year. I'm just about done the game, and it is phenomenal. But now they're rolling into a Capcom Spotlight, and we can see this over on their social media account, where they say, tune in on Thursday, March 5th, 2 p.m. Pacific, that'd be 5 p.m. Eastern Time, for that 30-minute Capcom Spotlight live stream. Okay, here are some of the games they have featured: Monster Hunter Stories 3, Pragmata, Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection, and Street Fighter 6. Now, with Street Fighter 6, I figure they can announce some different fighters or whatever, DLC, sure. But, I mean, you can just see the top three games there. It's like, oh, wow, they really are rolling into Monster Hunter Stories 3, Pragmata, and Mega Man Star Force Legacy Collection over the next few weeks, months or so. I mean, this is all happening pretty quickly after Resident Evil Requiem came out. And then get this, I go over to the Spotlight site that they have set up just to show this, right, with the broadcast right in the middle. And it's like, all right, feature titles. Yep, there's key art for all those. And at the bottom, Mega Man Dual Override. So the only reason I could think of they didn't work that into their initial message they put out on X and other social media platforms, it's not coming out this year. It's 2027. But like that to me would have been a big deal to go, okay, we've kind of seen these other games. We've even played Pragmata and Monster Stories 3 and obviously Street Fighter 6. That's already out. But Mega Man Dual Override still has so many questions to it. And it's just kind of at the bottom. It's like, yeah, Mega Man Dual Override will be there. It's like, hold on a minute. Like, it's cool that these other games are getting a spotlight just ahead of its release. But I want to see more about Dual Override. I would have led with that. Again, I know it's not out to 2027, but Capcom is rolling right now. Resident Evil Requiem, these other titles. Oh yeah, and then Onimusha, that's coming out this year too. And who knows, they have some other surprises like porting over Monster Hunter Wilds to the Switch too. Maybe a bunch of the other Resident Evil remake titles going there as well. So Capcom, man, rolling right now. And I mentioned that the Switch is 9 years old. Guys, 10 years ago, Capcom was in such a rough position before Monster Hunter Worlds came out. And Monster World came out. And now here they are in an incredible position, almost like they're just kind of leading with a lot of third parties when it comes to quantity, but also quality. So impressive stuff here from Capcom, firing in all cylinders. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this Capcom Spotlight happening on Thursday. Sure, because of Mega Man Dual Override, but also just to see what Capcom has going on, because they have really grown into that very, very interesting company to watch whenever they're ready to show stuff off. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Starfield moving over to the PlayStation 5. Of course, this has been discussed at length now, and people were going back and forth if it was really a thing. It does appear to be a thing, as we're getting multiple sources coming out, but also D-Labs seems to have their typical source that's probably tied to the retail side, whether it's in brick and mortar stores or online retailers. But like, we can see this, and this is translated over into English. But they say Starfield will indeed be released on PS5, able to confirm that the game will have a physical edition scheduled for April 7th, 2026. So yeah, we're a month out from this. There will be a standard and premium edition. So the standard edition, now these are, we have euros and pounds. I'm thinking it's going to be $50 and $70 though in the US for the standard, and then the premium. Not really sure what the premium edition comes with, but it won't have an early access period, which is something we've seen Microsoft do for many of their games. But this game, I mean, it's been out for a while on the Xbox and PC. So in this case, it'd probably just come with some extra stuff in the game itself, and that'll kind of be it. Now, they say that pre-orders should open on March 18th or possibly the evening of March 17th, of course, depending on time zone differences. And I guess that means that, yeah, we should have the thing announced then or before then. So in the next week or two, we should see Starfield get announced for the PlayStation 5. This has also confused some people online because there's been a lot of discussion going around about exclusivity and Xbox, and how maybe they'll pivot back and start having exclusives on the Xbox and PC again. But this is something that's been planned for quite a while. I mean, the discussion around Starfield on the PS5 has been a couple years now. So it's been in the works. Here it is now, a month out. They're not canceling it. Like, a lot of the stuff that's already been announced, that they're going to stay the course on. Some were calling for them to cancel Halo Campaign Evolved on the PS5, and that's just not going to happen. So I'm still curious what changes Asha Sharma has planned for Xbox, especially going into next generation. But really not going to see, I think, any of those results here for probably the rest of this year. I think in 2027, when they start to make the push towards next generation, is when we'll see more of a tonal shift into what their strategy is going to be over the next several years. And maybe that is a shift back to exclusivity. But at least for now, a lot of the games that have been announced, including Starfield that hasn't yet, yeah, that's going to be still pushing over to the PS5 as they've already planned. So business as usual there. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, the reviews are in, and Pokopia is now the highest rated game of the year. Are you picking it up? Okay, 53% say no, and I mean, just the type of game that it is, it's not going to appeal to everyone, obviously. So okay, half of the people are out. 30%, maybe later if there's a sale. Some were saying there's not going to be a sale. It's Pokemon. Look, I've seen Scarlet and Violet. I've seen Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. these games do go on sale at times because retailers will put them on sale maybe a year later. Maybe, I mean, you could see Pokopia, like, we'll say holiday season, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Maybe a retailer goes, you know what, it's $15 off, just see if we can get some traffic here. That very well could be in the cards. And then just 17% say yes. And I will admit, a lot of people, again, myself included, saw the review scores and went, whoa, okay, maybe we should kind of check this game out more than we were expecting, because you don't see when it first showed up, it was a 90 after like almost 30 reviews. And I saw that and I said, really, a 90? Okay, so it could still tick back up into that territory. And that's rare territory for a game, obviously, especially now with reviews where you can have 100 reviews and you have to overcome a lot to break into the 90s with those many opinions flooding in. But I'm curious now. So yes, the review score did kind of push me over the edge a bit to check this out. And I was curious to see if that was the case for anyone else. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Cesarlin, says, so God of War without the God of War. I mean, kinda, yeah. Here's the thing. We don't know if they're going to call it God of War and then like something else to go, like a subtitle. I kind of feel like they are going to use the God of War name because it does help to sell the game to people who don't necessarily pay attention as much. Maybe they're going through Walmart and they look over and like, oh, God of War, I know that franchise. Sure, I'll go and pick that up for a new game for my PlayStation 5. So it makes sense for them to use that name, but I understand what people are saying when they go, okay, well, you're not actually Kratos, so it's still God of War, because at least in Sons of Sparta, you're still Kratos. This is legitimately going to be something just different. Like, you're not going to be Kratos. So I'm not really sure how they're going to approach that. We still haven't even seen the game, though. Of course, opinions flying all over the place as to the main character not being Kratos, but we need to see exactly what we're dealing with here. So at least that's out of the way, and we can look forward to, I guess, a summertime announcement, and then we'll roll towards 2027 for its release. DMC combat, though, that's been thrown around, Devil May Cry, a bit, and that makes me kind of interested because we would get away from the Norse saga, and again, it was a little slower, closer, like much more up close and personal. I'm curious about them pulling the camera back and just saying, hey, go crazy. And that's kind of Faye's thing, is she's a crazy warrior from what we were hearing in different stories, fighting Thor and others. So it does kind of work into that gameplay style, and I think would be a nice break away from what we've seen in the past two mainline titles. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to hear more about how physical media is making a comeback from, we'll say, an unlikely source. I made a video on that, and I'll leave it right below. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.